Hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is adding the damage code to the rest of the enemies and making sure that they afflict damage to us the right way, and that when we shoot them or when they run into other things, that they don't end up accidentally causing damage to us. So I'm back in the project that we have been working on so far. Sorry for having to jump out and start another project, but I had to do that to be able to do the health bar, to be able to show you what it looks like, because I had already added it to this project. So then that way I could test to make sure that the inventory system was working correctly. So now we're back on track. Okay, so what I've done is the code that I wrote in for the rock formation, or for the stones that we blew up in the last project, I have now added that to the barrels, which is the stationary mine that we had in this project. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and push play and show you indeed that, come on, that if we were to go and shoot that, it would now cause us damage. But if we shoot them, and also that nothing is left behind. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically we're just going to copy and paste this code, create a couple of extra variables to destroy the explosion sprites depending on what it is that we are hitting. Like, obviously we don't need to get the projectiles to explode, we just need them to go away once they've hit us, so that they don't bounce and then double tap us. Basically, since we've done the S mine already, I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these. Okay, so the next one on the agenda would be the second item the second enemy that we created, which was the H-missile. So if we double click into the H-missile, we remember that we have area 1, area 2, and we were showing you how we could separate the different, have them operate in certain areas or have them respawn in certain areas. So what we're going to do is go ahead and double click on, because this is basically a pawn also. It's a AI controlled pawn. So we're basically going to do almost what we did to the B mine to it. So what we'll need to do is go ahead and grab all of the code. Let me zoom out just a little bit more. Okay, and just so that you know where I am, I've actually gone and opened up the B mine, so the stationary mine or the barrel mine. So we're in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of the code. Make it a little bit better. There it is. So that's what I'm going to want. So we're going to hit Control-C. I'm going to go into the homing missile. I'm going to hit Control-V. Okay. The thing that I need to add here obviously is going to be a exterior box collision, or some type of a collision setting. So let's go ahead and create that. So let's go to Add Components. Let's type in box, or you could type in collision and pick the collision that's best for you. I'm going to call this first person underscore first person character underscore collision. Okay, then we're going to go into the viewport. We're going to select it, and we're going to make sure that it is wider or bigger than the rest of the mesh. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go all the way around, just make sure that it's completely encased. Okay. So now that we have that, we want to again make sure that the collision settings are set correctly. So we're going to be selected on the collision box that we just created. We're going to go down to collision settings. We're going to switch this to custom. We're going to put all enable all collisions. We're going to leave it as a world dynamic, and we're going to make it ignore everything except for overlap with a pawn. Okay. Now the other thing you could also do is go back to the cube, and we don't need the pawn being overlapped anymore, so we could just say that that gets ignored. So those are the two changes that we need to make for the collision settings to get this to work, and we'll have to do that, unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, to everything that we're going to have collide with us, or to that will be taking damage away. Okay, so with that done, let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And what we'll need to do next is connect the code for that. So let's go back to the event graph. Now that we have the new collision box, let's go ahead and click on it. In the details panel, we'll keep scrolling down all the way to the bottom. And the one that we want is on component begin overlap. So we'll hit an add button, which should add that then to the screen. There it is. Let's go ahead and move that up to the rest of the code. Okay, we'll connect that to where that would have been in the other piece of code. So now we're saying yes, this is going to overlap. It's going to cast itself to the first person player. I'm going to make these things give us 5% damage because they are going to be respawning. From there, we have it, once it's applied the damage, destroying itself and then destroying all the component pieces for it. We obviously need to switch that because we have a different name for it. So we'll grab this, add it in. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing down here. We'll go ahead and grab another one of the collision settings and add that to the destroy. That way, regardless of how we destroy it, all the elements of it will be destroyed. The other thing that we also have doing is that this is respawning on the bottom code, the one that we have down here, so we can go ahead and do that with our code as well. What we'll want to do is add that back here to the back piece, so let's go ahead and grab all of these pieces and let's move them out of the way just a little bit. Let's add the additional pin, and then let's go ahead and grab the respawn code. So we'll hit Control C, Control V, and I'll probably need to move that up and out of the way first. So let me make a little bit more space. Okay, so off of the second pin, or off the third pin, the then 2 pin, we'll go ahead and add the respawn. And let's just double check and see that we have everything correct. So we're saying when we overlap the first person collision box, we're going to cast to the first person. We're going to get the first person's information and then cast this information to the first person, and we're going to apply 5 points of damage. After that, we're going to spawn an explosion effect, which we then have to turn into a variable. So this is the piece that we're missing here. So we're going to grab that, pull it out, say promote to variable. We're going to go ahead and name the variable. You will end up with a lot of explosion 1, explosion 2, explosion 3, explosion 4. So if you want, you can, let's say, HM space explosion, explode, and then we'll call this one 1. Okay, once we have it there, we can select it, and what we're looking for is the on destroyed, the second one from the bottom, the on destroyed. So when this is destroyed, we want it to then destroy the actor. Okay, and I'm just putting it closer to where it makes sense for the code, and then we'll click and drag off of this and say destroy actor. Okay, so at this point, let's take a look. So we have when this gets collided, it's going to go to the first person. It's going to apply 5 points of damage. First thing it's going to do is turn, after it does that, is going to turn itself into an explosion class blueprint. Then it's going to destroy every aspect associated with that. Once that part is done, it's going to then go in and destroy any components that are left over from there to make sure that we don't have anything else that we can run into. And then after that, it's going to delay for 5 seconds. It's going to wait, and it's going to respawn in the same area that we told that it was respawning in before. So we didn't have to recreate that code or go and find it because we already had it here once. So we just copied and pasted it over. So at this point, after having checked the collision settings again for the cube, to make sure that the cube's collision settings are set to ignore pawn, right? So they're going to block everything except for the ignore pawn, and it is going to overlap with projectile, so it can explode when it touches that way. And then this one is going to be ignore everything except for the pawn, which is what it's going to overlap with to then give us the top code, right? So this collision box gives us the top code, the cube will end up giving us the bottom code. And we'll come back and tidy that up in a little bit. I'll make it look a little nicer, but we should be able to hit compile and save. And we'll set a couple of these out on the floor. Oops, I just need to drag a few out. Okay, remember that these are working with the navigation mesh, so you have to make sure that they're seen by the mesh. Okay, so let's give this a try. Let's see if these now do indeed give us damage. Okay, so they did indeed give me damage. Let me see if I can explode one and see whether that causes me to get damage. That did not, and this one did not. I'm going to walk over the area. I am not being damaged by anything that's left over. Okay, so at this point we can then move on to the next enemy. So the next enemy would have been a... okay, so the next one would have been the moving statue. So I'm going to go find one of those real quick. Okay, let me just make sure that he's on the platform. Okay, I just want to see that he's actually going to move towards me. Make sure that everything with the navigation is correct. He doesn't see me and moves towards me and stops where he's supposed to at the edge of the mesh. Okay, so let's move this guy back just a little bit. And let's rotate him a bit so he doesn't just see us right away. Alright, now as far as the code, we're going to need to do the same thing. We're going to need to come in here and we're going to need to add a collision setting. I've already done that for this character, so if I click on that, you'll see that I've added the collision box and I've made it large enough so that it is well out in front. From there, what I needed to do is go into the collision settings for that box. I scroll down the details panel until I get to collision settings. We need to switch this from what it is to custom. We can put query on as enabled. We'll say we'll leave this box as a world dynamic, and then we'll click ignore to put everything to ignore except for the overlap on the pawn. And remember that this is going to trigger the effect of it running into us, causing us damage. From there, the other thing that might have collision settings would be the statue cube. In our case, I guess the statue cube what is holding the mesh, the static mesh. In this case, you can leave that as it was. It'll block everything, so it won't create an overlap with any of the events. It'll just block them and won't let them actually through, and that's good because that's like the inner core of everything. And then you'll see that we have the capsule, which is on the outside, so the capsule component. This will also have collision settings, so what we'll need to do is switch to custom, switch the object type to enemy, and remember that if you don't have enemy as an object type, what you'll need to do is go to settings, go to project settings, Once that pulls up, go to collisions, which is going to be on the left-hand side underneath engine, and there you will new object type, create the enemy class, and if you want, you can create an enemy preset. I've explained how to do that in another video, so I won't cover it here. It's just something that is unique, something that if you haven't created it, you won't see it. So with this, I'm going to say to block everything, even other the only thing I want it to overlap with are projectiles, and I do want it to ignore the pawns since we're dealing with pawns here. So this is going to deal with pawns, this is going to deal with the projectile, and then the mesh is the mesh, which is ignoring pawns and projectiles at this point because we're taking care of those two things out here. So once that's hit, we can go ahead and compile and save. Let's go into the event graph. What we'll need to do here is make a copy of the code that we used inside the mine. So if we were to go back to the mine, or even to the homing missile, it doesn't matter which one. And with this one, we're not going to need to copy much. We just actually need this, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes without the event. You'll hit Control C to copy. You'll go back to the statue. You will actually paste that. So let me just do this. Okay, we'll do that again. Maybe I just selected them, but I didn't. So I'll hit Control C and hit Control V. Okay, once that's there, go to the collision setting box. Remember, when that's selected, you can right click, add an event, collision, on begin overlap. And we'll go ahead and connect that in. So once that's there, we can hit compile and save. Now, interesting point about this collision setting, again, it could be a collision setting for the overlap for the beginning or the collisions for the overlap at the end. So it's totally up to you whether you want it to cause damage when you're leaving it or whether you want it to cause damage when you run into it for the first time. Now this thing did not have an explosion setting on the back of it. We did not have it actually explode. I am going to reduce the amount of damage that it can give us, so let's reduce that down to 5 points. So sort of like the homing missiles. So basically this will be like a big giant object that runs towards you, causes you damage, but there's not really a way for you to cause it damage or to get it to explode. So let's go ahead and push play and see what happens. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to walk out onto the mesh. You're going to see that it does indeed see me. If it runs into me, it causes me damage. It doesn't continue to cause me damage unless I run back. Whoa. So it ran back into me. We're still in contact. I'm still in the overlap. So as long as I stay in that overlap, I'm not getting any more additional damage. If I walk out of that overlap and then walk back into it, I will get damage again, regardless of whether this thing is moving towards me or not moving towards me. Okay, so that's it for this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it here, and we will do everything with the projectile in the next tutorial. So we'll do collision settings for the projectile and look at different ways that we might want that to cause damage to us. Okay, so have a wonderful day and take care. Bye-bye.